what I'll do just now is run through a few thoughts on what you might need in a digital strategy in the AI era. And then we'll do our wrap up and reflections at the end. So this is not just about AI. In fact, as I go through this, you'll see it's probably actually not that much about AI, and there's reasons for that. But what it will do is put you in a great place to use AI well. Now, I'm going to end up repeating some great points that our fireside chat people made this morning, but I think they're good points, so you're going to hear them again. What is a strategy anyway? Well, it's a point to aim for. Some people talk about having a North Star, and a strategy is really somewhere you can set your ambition and say, that's where we want to be. What you often find with digital and tech is that you need to change your path along the way. Maybe something you thought was going to be easy takes longer, or maybe something which was expected to be difficult actually works out really well. So you need to be able to be flexible and change your plans, but you do need to have that intention and that aiming point. Now, again, a lot of these principles were discussed by our fireside chat experts, but I'm just going to put them on a screen so they're in our minds again. You do have a choice. It could be a standalone digital strategy where you've got a separate document where you say the place we want to get to with digital is here. Or it could be about embedding digital goals within a wider strategy. I once worked for an advocacy organization where we had a digital goal around building an e-petition system, and that fitted within a broader discussion about advocacy, but we set ourselves some goals there and we got towards that. And what that meant was that people right across the organization were bought into it in a way that they wouldn't have been if there'd been a separate digital goal in a different document. We heard this morning about the value of having a short time frame, and a reason for that is digital and tech moves very fast. If you wrote yourself a 5-year digital strategy, I don't think anybody in this room is sitting here and thinking about that, but if you did, you'd find that things moved on and the assumptions you made in 2024 were no longer valid in 2029. What you can always do is review and iterate, and that's a really important thing to do with any strategy. Is don't just wait till the end of your time period and then surprise yourself with this and say, did we really write that? It's about having that ongoing review and saying, how are we getting on? Does something need to change? Another theme I think we heard about this morning was about the value of doing a few things well rather than a lot of things badly. Most of us are in organizations where we've got limited capacity. And I think Branny made the point that digital is a massive domain with loads and loads of areas. And as she said, it's about choosing what you're not going to do. That can be as powerful as deciding what you're going to prioritize. Do be specific. So have a story about where you're going to get to so you know when you've reached it. But be ambitious and flexible. And as we've heard in loads of contexts, I'm sure a lot of you have been in the user needs or user-centered design workshop. It's all about user value. So if something's in your strategy that needs to deliver something for users, and they could be people outside your organization that you're helping, or they could be people within your team. So maybe it's something about giving your finance and HR teams a much better process so they can be more effective and do a good job. All through today, anything we've been talking about in terms of digital, it has to connect back to your context. So you can't just do something with tech because you think it's cool or interesting. You need to do it because it makes a difference to your organization and what you're trying to do in the world. You need to understand where you're at now, your strengths and limitations. And a way to make this tangible is if you're writing your very first digital strategy, you might have some quite basic standard stuff in there. You shouldn't underestimate those, because if you do those well, that will move you to another level of capability where you'll be able to grow from there. If you're quite a way into your development of digital and tech, you'll be able to do something more ambitious. And there are organizations in the room like this. There's loads of organizations who've been doing lots of great digital stuff for a number of years. And if you're in that place, you can set your strategy to match that. You need to think about what you can do yourself internally and what you might need help with externally. And connected with that, you'll have a question about resource. I would always say if I'm looking at a strategy, if you've got a very big ambition at the top of it, you need to make sure there's enough resource in there to make it happen. So those of you who are in the website workshop, the kind of theme that was probably touched on there is making a good website work well depends on having some internal capacity as well. It's not enough to just go and give a developer a big check and say, come back in 3 months with a nice website. They might do that, but they're not going to give you the best job. It's about committing internally and saying, have we got the right people and the right capacity in the right place. It's also worth looking around at what other organizations in your space are doing. And events like this are quite a good space for doing that. You can have a chat, and what you almost always find, I guarantee you, if each of you wrote in a piece of paper and said, my top digital problem is ... I'll be able to find you someone else in the room who's done it 6 months ago. That always happens. Because of the conversations we have, we see those kind of potential matches coming up. But this kind of event is really good, where you can share with each other and say, right, have you done something with a CRM? Let me find out about it. And that can give you really valuable learning. So that's general digital strategy stuff, kind of recapping from this morning. So what about AI? Who was in the AI and cybercriminal session in the middle of the afternoon? Okay, if you were, you got a great kind of starting point introduction to AI. We don't have time to do that today, but if you go onto our DigiShift YouTube channel, we've done about 3 episodes on AI, and we can also run further training sessions on that. That's there as part of the training that we do at SCVO. But for now, at sort of 3:00 on an already busy day, we're just going to say a much better framing for AI is automation. And if you reframe it as automation, that helps you ignore all the hype about intelligence and understand what is being automated, who's doing the automation, is the automation good quality, what might go wrong if the automation doesn't work well. And that's a much better framing to give you a critical understanding of AI. With any new technology, there's the danger that you're going to get distracted from what your people need. So you do need to go back to what are the people we're working with? What's going to make an actual tangible difference for them? And to make good use of AI and associated technology, you need to be doing core digital areas well. So some themes we'll come on to in relation to that are stuff around content strategy, around data, and around automating processes. I'll come to some more points about how to break down an AI strategy in a minute, but it's really valuable to give yourself hands-on experience in your organization. So don't just rely on what you might have read, either in the mainstream media or in magazines or blogs that are connected with your area of work. They're all journalists looking for quick headlines. What you need is some contextual understanding of what AI can do in your context. So what could we do? I'm going to give you a few practical examples to make them kind of concrete. And the thing I always come back to is think about what could you do with a minibus full of interns? So this is AI's attempt to produce a minibus full of interns. You'll see that it's done it in a very literal way. So I think we've got 40 interns in a minibus that's built for 16. They're not wearing seatbelts. They are in a recognisably Scottish landscape, which is interesting. And the reason I use this metaphor is if you've got interns, they're going to make a valuable contribution to your organisation. They're probably really keen. They want to work hard. They want to move forward in their career. They've probably got a high standard of education. They're probably very good at reading and writing. But what they lack is contextual awareness. So they don't really understand your beneficiaries or the particular risks you face in your organisation. They've not made very many professional mistakes yet. And that means there are important limitations in terms of their ability to do the job well. If a minibus full of interns showed up at your charity, you wouldn't go and say, go and do the most risky, complex project that we've got, because I'm sure it will be fine. That would be barmy. You'd give them something a bit more straightforward so they could get their feet under the desk and understand how your organisation works. And I would extend that advice to how you might use AI as well. Don't go and expect it to help you with the most difficult things that have lots of nuance and complexity. A few concrete suggestions then. These are ways, and maybe we can show the hands as we're doing it. Has anybody tried using AI to transcribe and summarize calls or meetings? Got a few there. Can be really helpful. It's always worth checking, but it can be a real time saver if you've got a lot of audio that you're looking to quickly capture and note. Has anybody used it to summarize longer form documents? Yeah. So we're seeing quite a few examples of that. One area that's developing quite quickly is using an AI tool to retrieve key points from a library of in-depth information. So this is something called Retrieval Augmented Generative AI, or RAG AI. And the reason why I think this is really interesting is one of the big problems with AI tools is they're giving an average answer based on a big set of training data, which can be wrong. It'll make mistakes like it won't know facts or it won't know about your local context. if you connect it to a library of information, you can say, if you're a health charity, for example, saying we're giving people health advice, you can customize it so that it will only retrieve answers based on what you defined. So it will give a more natural language experience than a closed chatbot, but you can still have some confidence it will give you accurate responses. So that, I think, is an area to watch for because it has a lot of potential. Has anybody tried using AI tools to do sentiment analysis or categorizing feedback? So what this is if you get a really big basket of feedback, so like lots of free text comments on a training session, for example, you could feed them into an AI tool and it could categorize it into positive, neutral, and negative. And quite often in the voluntary sector, we get qualitative feedback, whereas a kind of rich pool of information about what's been going on, how people find it, but we lack the capacity to analyze it into a more quantitative data set. More practical then, has anybody used AI tools to draft communications from outlines? I'm expecting a lot of hands here. So quite a few have done that, and you'll see that there's limitations and challenges that you need to kind of be aware of, but it's quite a useful tool. I'm aware that we're well into the afternoon, so I'm going to give you my quick AI strategy cheat sheet. You can print this out and write a basic AI strategy. And it's quite simple. The first thing is have some kind of policy. So it can be a very brief sentence that says something about what your intention is with AI. And the reason why this is valuable is you're probably likely to have two types of people in your organization. You're going to have people who are very reluctant to try anything, who are very cautious. If you give them a steer on your intentions, they'll feel more confident to try stuff. You've probably got other people who are doing everything under the sun and not telling you. So for that reason, it's useful to have a policy that says certain things for this organization are not okay. So that's why having that headline intention is quite important. And it can be something like a simple sentence here about trying stuff out, but keeping people and data safe. Connected to this policy, it's also important to give people a space and a chance to try it out in a hands-on way. One of the really interesting things I think about AI is because it's a very approachable technology, the people who will get most impact from it are often people in very junior roles. So it's not somebody who's in a middle management layer or somebody who's a technical specialist, because the technology is basically solved, it's kind of ready to use. It's about people who understand, well, what does our support process look like? They'll have ideas about ways they can use it to become more productive. But have open conversations as well. I think throughout today, we talked a lot about having those kind of authentic conversations where you're sharing not just what's going well, but what are the problems that you're seeing. And if you do that, you'll learn much more quickly. A lot of organizations maybe will have a blanket, well, we're just not going to use it. The reality is people will use it, they'll just not talk to you about it. So it's important to have that kind of safe space where you get people talking about what's going on. If you've done those kind of three headline things, you can then build an AI innovation process. And again, it's a simple 4-step strategy. And this will be familiar if you've done other digital stuff. I've just borrowed this from other digital development principles. So try some stuff out, reflect on what worked and what didn't, and then share what you're learning. A really valuable thing you can do is share not just what's worked well, but what hasn't worked. Because if you share that information, you'll stop your colleagues from making the same mistake 6 months later. And then scale up or embed what's worked. So if you find something which is ready to implement across the organization, you can adopt that, put it in part of your tool set and use it. If it doesn't work, you can park it and say, well, we're not going to do that again because it was a waste of time. And related to this, you can have an effort versus value trade-off. Has everybody seen this kind of matrix before? I like it because it's nice and simple. I like simple things, but it's quite effective. Now, the way effort versus value works is down in the bottom left for you. We've got high value but low effort. And if you do stuff that's in this quadrant, you'll see a big return on investment because it's not taking much effort to do it, but it's delivering a lot of value for your users. You really want to avoid stuff that's in the top right because this is the high effort, hard to do, but low in value. So that's definitely a no-go area. Two other areas to think about are high value but high effort. And I would avoid that with AI-based solutions because what's happening with AI-based technology, it's developing so quickly that stuff which is hard to do today will be easy to do in 6 or 9 months' time. So you can wait for the technology to improve, so those things become easier for you to do. And one good example of that might be, as ChatGPT first got out of the blocks, there are lots of things around transcription and changing voice to text and text to voice. That's now becoming fully embedded in technology like Zoom. So you don't need a convoluted process. You can wait for it to arrive embedded as a feature in tech that you've already got. I'd avoid stuff which is low value and low effort, because even though it's low effort to do, if you do 10 low effort things, you've used up a lot of capacity that you can't spend on the high impact stuff. So that's the way I encourage people to think about the effort versus value quadrant. I'm nearly finished now, which is probably good because we're going to have a bit more discussion in a minute. But in the checkup that we have a lot of digital strategy building blocks. So these themes like culture, leadership and skills, tools and technology, communication and content, data, insight and AI, and cybersecurity. These are kind of core areas. There might be other areas that are relevant for your organization. It's not a kind of, it must be these 5, but these are the 5 that we use quite a lot. And you'd expect there to be something in one of these buckets in a digital strategy. You might find that you've maybe done absolutely loads in cybersecurity, in which case you could ignore that in your current strategy because you've actually got to a really good place with it. It's something you're giving attention to on a day-to-day basis, but you've done a lot of effort and got to a good place. Or you might find that maybe data is something you've not given any attention to at all, in which case that becomes a really thick chapter in a digital strategy. You'll flex this depending on what stage you're at. What we've just been developing, and it's something which is a very early pilot, is a digital strategy playbook. So this grew out of a blog that I wrote a couple of years ago. Is it a couple of years ago? Nearly. About why we don't give people a digital strategy template. Because probably a solid 25% of people that we talked to said, we want some digital support, and do you happen to have a digital strategy that we can use? And we said, well, no, because it needs to be your digital strategy. It can't be a kind of off-the-shelf one. So we've been thinking since then about what might you need to make progress to the digital strategy. So this is something that we're going to share as a template document you can use. And what it is a set of prompt questions for each area. So for each of the 5 themes I talked about, you can have conversations with your teams. And when you look at a particular area like leadership, culture and skills, you can ask yourself these 6 questions. So the first question is what's working well? Secondly, what's not working well? What's the challenge? What assumptions are we making in this area? And are they valid? What's at risk if things don't go well? What does great look like? What's our ambition? And what are the next steps for us? So the idea is that you use this in a conversational way with your teams, and then that will generate the beginnings of a digital strategy. And the reason why we're suggesting you take this approach is if you sat down on your own with a blank Word document, start writing, it might sound great, but it would have no buy-in across your team. And that's why we feel it's much better to make a team effort and start with conversations and reflections and see where that takes you, because we think that would be a much more productive approach than one person going away and thinking very hard. Because that person might be really insightful. They might have the right ideas. They might have seen it right and say, I know what needs to happen. But if they're not talked to anybody, this strategy is going to land on their desk and they're going to go, this sounds like a good idea, but why haven't we talked about it? So we're encouraging you to make use of this. What I'm going to do now for a second is say, do you want to turn to your neighbour for a few minutes and think about leadership, culture and skills in your organisation? So maybe pick 1 or 2 of these questions and have a chat with somebody next to you, and then we'll move ahead. I feel bad that I've gone with I'm going to start you asking really interesting questions, but then I'm going to not give you enough time to do it. But what we're going to aim to do is finish with enough time that you can do it over a cup of tea later. This guide is in beta, so it doesn't exist yet on our website, but it will do. I'd like a very quick show of hands. We've got it in PowerPoint format and in Word document format. Can we get a show of hands for a PowerPoint format to edit? Okay. Word document. Google. Oh, right. Heard of Google Doc. We'll make it available in multiple formats. But part of what we want you to do is go and try this and come back and tell us if you try this in your organization and people say, this is a total waste of time, we don't like it. we'd like to hear that, because we're not wedded to this. We've not invested a lot of time in it yet. So it's just an idea that we're trying out. I think we're at questions time now. I'm aware it's quite warm and a little bit sleepy in this room. But it's really time if people want to ask questions of us or of our speakers, we can do that. If people are feeling actually they're all out of brain power for questions, that's fine as well, because Alison and Maddie and I will give a little wrap-up time. But any questions you got on anything we talked about today?
Hi, I'm Maddie from Impact Arts. It's quite a sort of specific question, but it came up on the fireside chat at the beginning. We do all our HR recording on Excel. And so we'd quite like to move not to Excel, and a team of 50 people doing the recording and reporting is very time intensive. And so we're at the beginning of our journey of that. And it was part of when we were talking about digital strategies. And I was like, does anybody have anywhere where we can go and find some more information about it? Because I haven't started as such. I've just got lots of people giving me, this is a really good app to use and this will be really good. And I'm like, I've got 12 now. Great. So it's just, does anybody have any insights?
I'm happy to get the ball rolling while other folk that probably know more than me have a wee think. I'd probably start with a Moscow list. So must have, should have, could have, and won't have. So because what you'll probably find is an HR and holiday system has a lot of features in it. So it's about doing that, recognizing across the organization, what are your critical, any system must do this. And then there'll be other things which are nice to do, but optional. And then that will help you with a starting point, because that will then, what you've got, if people are giving you a wide range of suggestions, that's good, because that means they're engaged, but you need to do some work to say, let's whittle it down and say what's absolutely critical for us and what are things which we could flex or maybe live without if we had to. Anybody else want to chip in that one? There's probably somebody in the room that's already done it. Yeah. Right.
I can't talk too much about this because I don't work in HR, but we recently just implemented PeopleNest to kind of get rid of that entire manual process entirely, and we actually created a new role for somebody that would actually work doing that kind of thing, and we do offer support in that area as well, all digital support. So I mean, if that's something you're interested in, we can maybe chat afterwards about it.
So we've got a nice specific question. Anything else that people are sitting on and saying, I'd love to know this?
So Fraser from Scout Scotland. So from me as an organisation, what I'm looking at is we're on the Office 365 platform, and there's obviously a vast amount of programs and systems on there. And, there's nobody within our sector that's obviously got the knowledge to explore that. Is there any resources out there to actually go, there's systems on there that we can go and use that would actually be beneficial? Because there's obviously so much more to explore on it.
That's a good question. Microsoft, for a while in the pandemic, had a kind of proactive live learning offering that we partnered with them on. So I think about 1,600 organizations did live learning sessions. They don't do that right now, but they have a Learn portal, which is a big library of lots of videos about features and stuff. The other two things I'd suggest are, if you find good channels on YouTube or TikTok, it's a bit of a weird thing to add to your watch history. But there are people who are really good at breaking down features, and that can often be a quicker way about picking stuff up than actually going and reading massive bullet pointed articles which send you to sleep. The other thing that I would do is give your team time to try stuff out and maybe do a swapping of ideas, because what you'll often find, unless you're an absolutely tiny organization, is there'll be people who have stuff that they know, like clipboard history, for example, is something which impresses some people. You'll pick stuff up and go, well, I actually know this stuff, but there's no space or time to share it. So sometimes I think allocating a bit of time and saying, use this time either to do a kind of pair up and share a few skills, or go in your own time and, watch some videos or playlists and explore stuff. Because often the problem people have is they're doing the day to day. If you're trying to solve a work-related problem, you're not sitting there saying, well, I'll go and learn some obscure Excel features, because you need to get a job done by a particular deadline. So carving out a bit of time can be quite helpful as well. I think we'll go to our wrap-up time if people are happy with that. So Maddie and Alison, we've got 3 questions we're asking ourselves or reflecting on. So we thought to ourselves, we want to make sure we wrap up the day not on a kind of, we're going to give you our 18 bullet points of exactly everything we learned collectively, but we thought we would reflect a bit because there's been a lot of different sessions. And so we wrote ourselves our little prompt questions because we're treating ourselves like AI now. So we thought we'd think about what we really loved about today, something we're still wondering about, and one thing that we want folk to know. So would you like me to go first? One thing I loved about today, apart from having such an enthusiastic audience, was I ran this session on low-cost digital, where we're kind of running through a guide that we're about to publish about ways you can save money with digital. And it turned out every tip that I suggested, everybody had already done it. And that made for a slightly weird session because I kept thinking, they'll never have heard about this one. Oh, they have. But that actually, for me, was a positive in the end, because then I recognized that the people who got together, you're already doing the basics really well. So that's a good thing to see. I'd hate it if I'd done a tip that said you could save yourself thousands of pounds and organizations hadn't do it. So that was the kind of good encouragement for me, was seeing, well, we've got a group of people here who are in a good place with digital. Should I pass across to you?
Thank you. For me, one of the things that I really loved right at the start was Branny's phrase, actually, that you used, Branny, around digital throws a light on dysfunctional processes. And I hadn't really seen it like that, because those of you who know me, I'm eternally optimistic and always very enthusiastic and cheery. And I hadn't really seen it from that, well, that's quite interesting, because for some people, they'll be sitting there going, well, if you introduce this digital tool, that's going to show you that the way that I do this with my 7 different spreadsheets could be done differently and better. And that's really scary. So whilst I've always seen the fear factor, I haven't really seen it as like a spotlight on for particular people. So that did bring that right back to the front of my brain about actually thinking about how people do feel about it and what they do. Because I've been doing this for a long time, I forget that not everybody thinks it's a wonderful thing like I do, which then led into that it's all about people. So remembering that digital is, which has been our key message, and I think all of the organisations we work with, is it is all about people, and remembering that and just loving that fact that it is all about people, really, for me, is one of the key things, I think. Alison.
Does this work? Oh yeah, it does. Hello. I guess for me, it's been meeting and hearing from the attendees, and I guess similar to what John said, I found it really interesting. I mean, you all rated very highly in the cybersecurity at the beginning in the digital checkup, so my job's done, really. But I thought that was really interesting, because a lot of what I focus on, so part of my role is coordinating a program of work to help improve cyber resilience within third sector. And a lot of the time I'm focusing on small to medium-sized organizations and what I can do to help them. But it was really interesting to hear from you guys and how actually you're a lot more mature digitally, obviously, when it comes to cyber. So, what can the program of work do for you? And I guess moving on to, that's what's got me wondering about, like, how can I pivot the program to support you as well as the small to medium? And just, speaking to David earlier, the diversity of the sector is immense. So it's like, I need to try and think of things that help everyone to a degree. So I'm always open to ideas on what the program can do. So if anyone has anything that they think we should be focusing on and how we can help improve cyber resilience. We've done a lot of work on streamlining the content and trying to basically improve communications around it and working out what the barriers to get involved with it and engaging with cyber are. But yeah, I'm always open to people's suggestions and ideas on what else we could do in the space and how we can help support you in that capacity. So sorry, I've jumped onto the next one, but then you can jump back.
Thank you. I will. Thank you. I think for me, the thing that I've been wondering about was around digital ethics, was a big thing. As SCVO, we are supposed to be, and I think we do quite a good job of being, purely because David's here, the voice of Scotland's voluntary sector. It's one of our key things, and one of our objectives, and we've got 3 core objectives, and one of those is about being an authoritative voice for the voluntary sector. And that, wondering how do we as an organisation start to talk about being digitally ethical, using different platforms, thinking about where things are kept, what that means for us as an organisation, and how do we then start to have that conversation with the sector. So not just within our own organisation, we have conversations about whether we should stop using X as a social media platform, but we're not discussing using Amazon to deliver computers around the country. So actually, where does that sit? What does that do? I can see David going, oh, that's too big a question. So I'm sure I had something arrive from Amazon the other week, but there is that. It's just that having that conversation about how do we start doing that and what do we do basically is for me the wondering thing. How do we make that a bigger conversation within our organisation and wider? That was a bit of a ramble. Sorry.
No, that was great. Thank you very much. And I think so. A bit of a similar one for me was I was in the hybrid collaboration session. And David was very modest about it, said I put this together at great speed. But what it did a really good job for me of was reminding me that hybrid working and collaboration on the surface feels like a bit of a techie problem where it's about, have we got the right tools? Are our team well connected? And actually it raises much deeper questions about what does performance look like? What does community look like when we're working in a hybrid way? And I think for me, loads of digital stuff often shows up as a headache with tech, but actually it's a people headache. And I think that's an interesting theme for today and I think Branny said it as well in the fireside chat, was about actually the tech is sort of solved in many cases. It's about choices and prioritization you need to make in your organization at a deeper level.
Yeah. I think you did your shout out for other information, didn't you? You did your third one. Yeah. No. Did you? Did you not pass? Alison.
Thanks. I guess for mine would be what do I want people to know. Please have a look at the Cyber Scotland website. There's a section now dedicated to third sector, and we're trying to use that as a single source of truth for all things cyber resilience and cyber security. If there's anything on there that you think is missing, then please let me know, and then we can try and create content in that space or work out how we can signpost to relevant information. As part of that, we've also launched a quarterly bulletin that comes out recently that talks about common threats that are happening specifically within third sector, which is always really useful to hear about other organizations that are going through similar things and what they're doing in response to those, and just keeping people up to date on what's happening in the world of cyber. So please do have a look at that if you want to learn more about what's happening and just keep up to date with the sector.
Thank you. For me, it's about letting you know we're just about to start what we're calling our digital leads community, and it's something that's new. It may or may not work. There are other things. Ross has got Tech for Good Scotland. Within the work that we do, we've obviously got various different things that you can come to. We've got our sessions. We've got all kinds of stuff as well. So there's different spaces that do different things for me, whether they're online, whether they're physical spaces, whether they're face to face. What I think is missing is a space where we can all just informally get together just to have a chat about what's working, what's not working, and what are we going to try differently, where we can just listen to each other and say, right, you've done that really well. Which bit can I take? Can I take that forward? So it's not about somebody presenting or that idea. It's just basically having a cup of tea and a conversation that is directed around this. So I think we've got our first one December the 4th. Alison's there from the cyber aspect as well. And see if that works. So if you're there, join us online. I think I might be using Big Blue Button now, which we heard from our ethics. I think I might move away from using Zoom and try something slightly different. That John's going, oh God, what are you? You can see David going, oh, what's she talking about now? He's going, no, you're not using that. But we'll see. Just to try something, might try something different. Who knows? Let's be a bit experimental. But the idea is it's just about having a chat and getting together and seeing it. So we'll see. We'll see. If you're there, join us. It'd be great. We're going to try and run them 3 times a year, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
I think I'd say something similar, which is one thing that's different about today is in person, it's everybody together in a room for a whole day, which we've not done for a long while. But right across the year, we're doing activity online. So we just encourage you to engage with that. So actually next week, we have DigiShift 84, which is about innovation. We've got somebody from Marie Curie talking about how they use techniques to boost innovation in their organization. So that's happening all the time. So really encourage you to connect with us. The other thing is that both Maddie and I offer one-to-one support. That can be just a light touch chat about something, but we're there and available. So just be in touch with us and we can give you support because we've got support to do that. So yeah, be in touch, I guess. So thanks very much indeed. It's been a great day for us and I hope it's been a good one for you. Thanks very much.